Okay, assessing suitability of applicants. Research came out of clear job roles, formal recruitment procedure, behavioural-based interviewing, questioning structured to validate organisational values and determine candidates' attitude. Probationary period is critical. Pre-interview questionnaires, work sampling. Work sampling has also been shown as one of a really cheap way, but a really quite a high way of sampling what people can do. In terms of, maybe, give them an incident report to fill out or give them a basic budget to do. We had a lovely post staff member of ours who could budget, not to anyone else's but to her mind. She would use our mobile phones to phone New Zealand when she heard she had a crisis with her family. So her idea of budgeting was a little different to ours, and it would have been nice if this was picked up in the early days of her recruitment. But she was brilliant with challenging behaviour and taking directives, but she had this major flaw which was costing the organisation a fair bit of money. Literacy and numeracy you've mentioned. Retention strategies, you've all heard about some of these this morning. We talked about these earlier on. The common phrase is people join firms but leave managers. Often the research is suggesting that, through the literature review, is that in this particular community service industry, we have people who have been on the floor. They've been at the coalface. They move up the ladder. They may have great skills on the coalface, but when it comes to managing other people, not so crash hot. That's what the research is suggesting. And people leave because they may be good at dealing with some of our guys with intellectual disability or whatever, but when it comes to dealing with colleagues and supervising people and bringing out the best of them, not good. Okay. Open communication, we heard about. Strong orientation, induction process, mentoring frameworks. One of the things that came out of Sydney was rewarding processes if you want to get the outcomes. There's a hospital in the States where a lot of people were dying from cross-infection because the doctors weren't washing their hands, and no one could tell the doctors, multimillionaires, very proud people. So what they thought was, okay, how are we going to get these guys to change their habits? So someone came up with the idea of giving them $10 Starbucks vouchers if they wash their hands between visits. And you have no idea how far these guys were willing to run for a $10 Starbucks voucher. By focusing on the process, the outcome was that the deaths decreased significantly. Dr. Keith Suter, social commentary, spoke a fair bit about this in Sydney and talked about the New York example of focusing on the small things. We've always been told not to sweat on the small stuff, but he was saying sweat on the small stuff and the big stuff will follow. There's a great book out just coming to Australia now. I think it's called Influencer, The Power to Change the World or something, by Kerry Patterson, produced by McGraw-Hill. And it's all about lots of examples about thinking outside the square. Recognition needs to be spontaneous. Okay, people recognise flattery. It needs to be done when catching people doing things right. The old management phrase, which is, we're always catching people doing things wrong because we're always on the back foot, but we've got to change that. Effective rostering. I have a lot of trouble talking to colleagues about, sure, we have to get rosters to match the needs of our consumers, but also we have to be creative and match the needs of our staff, our good staff, if we want to keep them. And that's an uphill battle, trying to get colleagues to get, to get this to sink in. Management structures. If you want someone to care about something, let them have some ownership. This was something came across from Father Chris Riley's, some of his books and his talks. He was talking about young people. If they're going to care about something and they're not going to vandalise something, give them some ownership in it. Culture of fairness. We've got what we call a catch and release strategy, where we get new people coming into the organisation. We feed them up with knowledge and skills in the induction. We throw them out. We pull them back. It's like a Rex Hunt strategy, but we just don't kiss them before we throw them back. And it's about every 2 weeks now I try and put into my roster half a day of just touching base with people, SMSs or phone calls, with all the good casuals out there, because there are casuals who want to stay casuals, who love that flexibility. We have quite a few people who are financially secure, who have made their money, they're in their mid-40s, and they're just kicking back and they're enjoying the work they're doing. So that's what we do with them. I'll jump over this because these sorts of things have been presented. You can check this out on the website. Just some final thoughts from the research Keith and I did last year. I think it was KPG Consulting said that the labour shortage is basically, it's here to stay, as we know. It's going to get worse in 2010 and 2011. You have to know your people. This has been one of the themes throughout today. You've got to know your staff. You've got to know their pressure points. One of the interesting things is a lot of our guys with intellectual disability, our consumers, have time to think, develop behaviours because they're not engaged, and they know the staff better than the managers know the staff. They know what's the pressure point of this person, so I can have a bit of fun, push it. This person responds this way. We need to know our staff, how to get the positive, how to press the positive points out of them. Only creative organisations will survive the labour shortage. There's a great lady from Hollywood Private Hospital in WA. Some of what they've done with their recruitment, they ran a focus group looking at how to maintain nurses who are about to leave. And they sent out a letter, said, look, we want to keep you on, you're great, how can we do it? They had a room full of people, and all the nurses gave a standing ovation just because they had received a letter to say, we do value you. We need to be advertising and marketing. We need the skills and the knowledge to be out there. We need to look outside the disability sector and what the corporates are doing. Deep understanding of demographic, what makes them tick. Okay, to retain Generation Y to Generation X to baby boomers, completely different strategies. You need to know this. Turnover is linked to performance of managers. Talked about that. Ongoing supervision, reward processes. If you want outcomes, 80% of turnover is linked to poor hiring mistakes. That's something else that has come across strongly today. Compensation is not the key to retention, and you need to address the intent to stay variables. And this has come out through the research as well. And to change this idea of the industry is not a sexy industry. Who would have thought the telecommunications industry would have been a sexy industry 15, 20 years ago? But it's changed, and we need to look at doing that as well.